Samuel Adams, another quote I want to break down is, he said, quote, "The liberties of our country, the freedoms of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards." Again, the right to defend, freedom. It is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We have received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors. They purchased them for us with toil and danger and expense of treasure and blood. It will bring a mark of everlasting infamy on the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without a struggle. By violence without a struggle. Or to be cheated out of them by the artifices of designing men. Manipulation, trickery. That's what artifice means. And that's what we're allowing to happen through emotional mind control, heart control, as I call it. Whipping people's emotions up into a frenzy as a result of a chaotic event, and then jumping in and taking advantage of that situation by telling them the only way you can solve this problem and be safe is to give up your rights. And that's what Adams here is calling being cheated out of our rights by the artifices of designing men. And it will bring a mark of everlasting infamy upon this generation should we allow that to occur. The founders of this country did their best to make sure that wouldn't occur, by telling people about their inherent right for self-defense and putting it down in a document that would hopefully get people's attention to look at what they meant by it, study it deeper, and understand it in a deeper way. And unfortunately, again, you have idiots out there. I'm not going to be nice about it. If you don't understand that the right to own, keep, and bear and use arms of any kind is your inherent natural right to defend yourself, you're an idiot. I don't need to be nice about it. I don't want to be nice about it. You shouldn't be nice about this to people. How about that? How about we go that far and say, anybody who thinks that shouldn't be treated nicely. You don't deserve to be treated nicely because you are advocating violence. You are advocating that someone else may come and take away my right to defend myself. And again, yes, I'm angry about it. If you're a new age idiot who thinks that there should never be a time to get angry about anything, please turn the show off and go listen to some guru chanting or meditating in some ashram somewhere, and go wait for the modern day Nazis and the modern day communists to come and take your weapons away from you, or just take your rights if you don't have weapons. But if that's your definition of what you should do, then I say you're self-loathing. You ultimately hate yourself at some level. That's why this is all taking place anyway, folks. Let's just get right down to it and be honest about it. The reason all of this problem that humanity is going through right now is humanity doesn't have enough self-love. Ultimately, people hate themselves. We have so much self-loathing, and people say, oh no, that's not it. People are too much in ego. Yeah. Well, being rooted in the ego is self-loathing, ultimately. If you don't understand the true self, if you haven't expanded your awareness to understand the true self, you ultimately hate yourself. You can't possibly love yourself because that expanded awareness is true self-love and true self-respect. It's taking another look at who you really are, as opposed to who you think you are or been told that you are from the day you popped out of the womb. The people who will sit and take punishment and abuse and not do anything in the physical domain ultimately are self-loathing individuals who will not stand up for their rights. And you know what? Historically, that's what most people are. Because the state constantly teaches people, you're less than, you're less than. There's all this stuff that's greater than you. You're so less than this. You're so less than that. You're less than us. We have a right to control you. You have the moral obligation to obey us. You're little. You're powerless. You're small. They keep hammering and reinforcing these notions when the reality is we are everything. We are ultimately all powerful. When we stand up, stand in truth, stand in righteousness, say no to violence, say no to evil, and exercise our rights, then nothing can stop us. The full force of the universe is behind us, is at our back. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid, as Jack Blood says. Those forces inherent in the universe will have our back if we are bold and stand in truth and stand in right. And this is what Samuel Adams was trying to impress upon people. Our inherent rights are worth defending in the physical domain with physical force if necessary when violence is being done. And if we should suffer them to be wrested from us, to be taken away from us by violence without a struggle, that is a mark of everlasting infamy. This was a person who was actually enlightened. He understood the spiritual is not different than the physical, is not separate. That's where the dualism comes from, in thinking that spirituality is somehow operating on some different plane or domain than the physical. This is the spiritual domain, ladies and gentlemen. You're in the spiritual domain. This is a holographic construct, in case you haven't figured that out or you're not up to speed on modern quantum physics. They have proven it. Not put forward a theory or a notion. It is proven experimentally in carefully controlled conditions that there is no solidity to physical matter. You're existing in a spiritual quantum hologram that is a unified field of energy that reacts to the consciousness that we are actually generating, that is expressing through us and then moving out into the field of energy and expressing as the physical events that take place around us in our society. That's true. It's not a theory. So a lot of the founders of this country were simply theists. They believed in a spiritual reality, but they didn't place any importance. They didn't place the spiritual in superiority to the physical, nor were they materialists. They didn't place materialism in superiority to the spiritual. They understood that there needed to be these two seemingly opposite or seemingly polarized domains were in fact one and the same. And they brought them together. That's why they understood to allow your rights to be usurped and taken at the point of at the threat of physical violence or the conducting of physical violence is really an insult to the soul. It's an insult to the spirit. Because what happens here is the expression of spirit, of the spiritual domain, quote unquote, if you will. Again, these domains are not separate. They are one and the same. He understood the difference between force and violence. Force, as we've defined it, the capacity to do work or cause physical change. Violence is the immoral usage or the abuse of physical power. And it is when it is used to coerce or compel someone to do something they don't wish to be done or to do, to be done to them or to do. So violence is the initiation of coercive action. You're taking free will away. It's theft. Again, all forms of wrong are ultimately theft. You are taking something that doesn't belong to you, someone else's rights, to act as they will so long as they are harming no one else. Violence is always in opposition to morality, always in opposition to natural law. It involves the violation of others' rights all the time. And no one ever possesses a right to conduct violence. But if violence is conducted without right, as it always is, without right, Inherently, there exists a right to defend oneself against that action. We always have a right to respond to violence with defensive use of force. Always. That is always present. It is inherent in nature, and it can never be taken away by man. Force is always an action that exists in harmony with natural law, because you're not violating the rights of others. You're responding to an action which has already violated your rights. Therefore, to put that action down through physical force, you're not violating the other person's right to remain unharmed. They've just forfeited it by taking the violent action. So let's just look at a simple example of theft. Someone on the street, we're walking in open territory, turns to me with a gun or a knife and says, "Give me your property." Doesn't matter what it is. Give me your shoes, your shirt, your coat, your wallet, your handbag. It doesn't make a difference. If it happens to be a female walking down the street with her purse, okay? The person who is initiating this violent action has no right to do it. No one has any right to do that. That's their property, they're using it, and you don't have any right to it. You have no claim of ownership on that. And yet you're telling them, either give it to me or I'm threatening you with physical force, with physical violence, I'm sorry. I'm threatening you with violence. I'm going to conduct violence if you don't do what I say. That's coercion of the will. Coercive action and threat has been initiated. That is violence. That person has just, in doing that behavior, forfeited their inherent right to remain unharmed. They have a right to remain unharmed, but not when they're conducting violence. Then someone else's inherent right to self-defense trumps their inherent right to remain unharmed. The person who's on the receiving end of the violence has an inherent right to put the violence down so that they may remain unharmed. So if, let's say, for example, the woman who's been accosted and the person who's demanded their purse, okay, she takes out a pistol, shoots the person right in the head, and they're dead. It's hard for people to understand, but that was a right action. She possessed the right to do it, and she acted. Did it kill someone? Yes, it did. Did she have the right to kill that person? Yes, she did. And again, this is so antithetical to the brainwashing of the New Age movement that they want to convince you there's never a time that you can ever rightly exercise force. Because this is a controlled opposition movement, ladies and gentlemen, the New Age movement, to try to get people to stand down and not stand in truth and stand in right and defend their rights. That's what it is. That's why it's out there so prevalently. And they'll never talk about this. They'll never talk about it. Because they're frauds. That's why. Frauds who want to believe that the world is all peaceful and harmonious and ascending to a higher level of consciousness. Yeah, in unimaginably molasses slow rate maybe, because some people are waking up to the real truth, not the New Age bullshit that's out there. That somehow you don't have a right to defend yourself against violence just because, or that you don't have a right to defend yourself against violence just because it's calling itself government. Your master. But they'll never talk about that. No. We need to understand that when violence is conducted against us, we have a right to defend ourselves with force, up to and including the deadly use of force. When a government comes to take your rights through violence, you have an inherent right to defend your freedom against that aggression, of violence with deadly force if required.